Asante sana. The Honorable Julius Migoso Gamba, Cabinet Secretary for Education. Your Excellency Ahmed Abdullahi, Chair of the Council of Governors and Governor of Wajir County. The Honorable Adan Daoud, Member of Parliament and Patron of Wajir High School. Our Senator who has spoken here, and our other Member of Parliament, the Principal, Adan Kasim Farah, the Chair of the Steering Committee, Abdurrahman Ali Hassan, distinguished members of the alumni, parents, teachers, students, stakeholders, and friends of the school, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to preside over this inaugural meeting of the Wajir High School Alumni Association, which coincides with your enduring journey to the 60th anniversary celebrations in February next year. My greatest appreciation goes to the leadership of the alumni for inviting me and for your dedication to preserving the enduring legacy of Wajir High School, which has produced many renowned leaders who have served diligently in many spheres here in Kenya and abroad. I'll be coming back to that aspect. It is particularly encouraging to see former students united for the purpose of enhancing the alumni network and celebrating the achievements of your great school. You are laying a firm foundation for the growth of this school into the future, ensuring that it continues to benefit the generations that come after you. Your school, as you have heard, has a long history of excellence since it was founded on February 8th, 1965. As the first secondary school in the former northeastern province, it pioneered education for nomadic communities from Garissa, Isiolo, Mandera, Marsabit, Wajir. It grew from humble beginnings with a single stream to a national school excelling in academics and inclusivity. As we celebrate your alumni, we honor the former students who have made a sterling contribution in the public, private, not-for-profit, and academic spheres. And I'll just mention a few. It's not exhaustive. They include, for instance, the late Ahmed Khalif Mohammed, former Minister for Labor and MP for Wajir West, the late Yusuf Haji, former Minister for Defense and Senator of Garissa County, Engineer Abdullah Sharawi, who is here, former Permanent Secretary and Chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Mandera County Governor, Mohammed Adan Khalif, and Senator Ali Roba, Engineer Mahbub Malim, the former Executive Secretary of IGAD and the current Chair of the Declaration Fund. We also have the former immediate Governor and many others who have distinguished themselves in the governance of our country. We also recognize women leaders who have rendered exemplary service, including Ambassador Rukia Subo. I don't know whether she's around. Thank you. And Mrs. Nuria Sheikh Farah, as well as men and women who have made a significant contribution in our business sector, including Mr. Ahmed Sheikh Abdullahi, former principal and proprietor of Isili Mall and Yare Park, and Mr. Hussein Anshur, the CEO of Bluebird Aviation. This is by no means exhaustive, and it will continue to grow. I wish to acknowledge and congratulate the newly elected Alumni Association leadership and encourage you to continue building collaborative networks to continue supporting the growth of the school. The students, parents, and the community will look upon you to sponsor needy students and participate in physical and social development initiatives that will shape their future. You will also be called upon to mentor the students and guide them into the most viable lifelong careers. This event, together with your 60th anniversary next year, are critical milestones that cement the legacy and achievements of your school. Let me conclude by urging you to remain part of Wajir High School's transformative journey. You will proudly be part of a vibrant alumni network that will influence change and shared prosperity for the local communities and for Kenya. Let me, just before I do the formal launch, let me echo the critical points that have been raised, first by the Minister for Education, the Honorable Migos Ogamba. In terms of policy, he has announced very clearly that what you are doing, his ministry is now formulating a proper legal framework so that it does not just begin and end with Wajir, but it will spread to other parts of the country so that our institutions can borrow from the initiative that you have today put in place. It is important that once we have gone through institutions, we do not just walk away, because institutions will grow when those who have been beneficiaries of those institutions look back and see how they can improve and consolidate those institutions. So your gesture is extremely important, and it deserves being emulated across the country through a proper and structured legal framework and policy position, and the Ministry of Education will spearhead that, and we are happy that it's well on course. The second thing that I just want to point out is that integration, as the governor has said, is important. We must work together, and there is something to benefit, because as we stood here, I could see the introduced Engineer Sharaway, who has made a major impact in different sectors of this country. He has been, I think he has a proper record, but he told me he has been a PS in 8 ministries in this republic, and he has grown within the ranks. He is respected, I can tell you for sure. And he was very fair, whether he was dealing with the roads or whether he was even dealing with the boundaries and delineation of boundaries. This was a very fair man, very honest, and very focused. If you wanted something done, and that I can attest to, if you had him in the mix, you are going to get good results, fair results, and a very balanced approach. Equally, I was so pleased to see the Mwalimu in 1969, Lesirma. Lesirma has been also a PS, he has been a legislator, and again, a very dedicated public officer in this country. When you see what we have today as the Kenya Airports Authority, it used to be then the Kenya Aerodromes. He was the pioneer, this gentleman here. worked and set the foundations for what today is the Kenya Airports Authority, that handles all our aviation in the Republic, all our facilities. And he also served as a very, very solid permanent secretary. They set the tempo. One sometimes looks back with nostalgia because these were very, very solid principal secretaries. And he's here to namshukuru tena because he's one of us and he also taught in your school. But it is important that we take care of our younger people. Some of the statistics that we see in two areas are dangerous, and I think collectively this can also be something that the alumni can champion. One is the influence of drugs in our young people. It's a very, very serious challenge. And when they have a chance to hear from the alumni and how you help them, you will again be helping them veer away from dangerous practices and focus on what is right for them, for their future, and indeed for the country. So that is one area where I think deliberate initiatives from the alumni can also be very useful in helping our young people all over the country to become citizens of good repute. I was shocked, and I don't know whether some of you saw it, that sometimes we tend to think this drug issue is a small matter. But I was watching Al Jazeera just a few days ago. And one of the things that came out is that the regime that has been toppled in Syria, when they now start unraveling the things that were there, you find that there was literally a government orchestrated industry where drugs were being bound in electric coils, in electric equipment, and then exported. So that the government there was surviving on drugs, but exporting them as electrical goods. You know, so that tells you what happens when drugs permit and when we reach a stage where governments also lose direction. Because how do you reach a stage where a government becomes dependent on destroying the lives of other people? So these are issues that I think we can take up collectively, and as an alumni, it can be a focal point, a focus point, which can help us make sure that our children all over the country are safe from these dangers. The second one is the issue he mentioned around HIV. The governor mentioned this. Again, we need to focus. In the region, for instance, Kenya, I think, has got about 1.3 million people who are living with HIV, and they are dependent on government support, either the antivirals, and because with that you can, but there are other countries where we see a very high percentage. We have countries in Africa where the numbers are as high as 8 million people living with that challenge. So I wanted to focus on Kenya because sometimes you don't want to talk about other countries because people can get very, very offended. but the statistics are there. Statistics are there. So we need to draw the attention of the younger people to their moral behavior, because it can become dangerous and we don't want to lose them. And I bring this up because many countries are relying on the US support under the PEFA. Many countries are relying on the PEFA agreement, which supports medical drugs and so forth to various countries. But you see, a policy in a country can change. There's a new regime that has come into the United States. Suppose it decides to look at it differently. What happens to our citizens who require medical attention from those? And right now the ratio is that the government of Kenya covers about 40% of the needs, but through partnerships with other countries, the 60% gap is filled. So suppose that 60% gap, suppose the countries that are supporting us also pull back, then we will have an even bigger challenge to make sure that our citizens who deserve medical attention, who deserve medical drugs and so forth, to help them not to suffer the consequences of pain and so forth. What happens to them? But I wanted to bring this because our demography has shown that 70% of the Kenyans, of our people, our population is below 35 and below, 70%. So we have a duty to talk to our younger people, and we have a duty as alumni to give special attention to some of these areas, so that as we talk to them about career development and so forth, let us also talk to them as areas that need special attention, ili taifa letu lisiangamie. Hatutaki our younger generations to suffer. So we all have an obligation, and therefore your initiative is extremely timely and so important. And we want to acknowledge kwa kusema tunawavulia kofia kwa sababu ya jambo hili. So we will be working there to unveil what we have to unveil, but hopefully next year between me and Migos, we will, as I said, we will conspire so that here February we find a way of being part of a celebration with yourselves for this very good achievement as we look at this. So Governor, tutapanga tu polepole through conspiracy na senator na wengine ili tuwe pamoja na nyinyi wakati huo. So it is now my pleasure to declare the Wajir High School alumni officially launched. And I've also been taught to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmat Allah wa barakatuh. Nimejaribu, si ndio? Asante sana. Thank you so much, and we wish you tremendous success as alumni. Asanteni sana.